Hi there, and welcome. I'm Laura, and this is the Human Aid What Matters to Europeans in 2024 webinar. Thank you for joining us. We are super happy you're here and hope you enjoy the fantastic content that we have created for you to enjoy over the next hour or so. Before we get going, though, let's take a special moment for a few housekeeping bits of info. In the bottom right corner is a chat function. Here you can tell us how you're feeling today using emoji, or in true European style, tell us where you are in the world and what the weather is like. There's also a tab to raise questions, respond or upvote another person's questions using the arrow at the left-hand side. And of course, we are recording today, which you will receive after the session. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy your CAP during today's webinar. Thank you for listening to those. Let's now take a look at who you'll be seeing and hearing from today. As I mentioned, my name's Laura. I'm a Senior Business Director at Human Aid and have the absolute pleasure of working with some really talented colleagues and inspiring clients across Europe in health and well-being, as well as FMCG categories. When I'm not talking all things insights though, what matters to me in 2024 is rebalancing. Through committing to my daily yoga practice, climbing Ben Nevis later in the year, and taking my kids for their first trip to the Dutch theme park, Efteling. And the other faces you can see on the slide are the two brilliant presenters for our session today, Paul and Alex. Paul is a business director and partner at Human Aid. He has worked in Insight for longer than he likes to admit, but suffice to say he's past the quarter century mark. Now they're his words, not mine. Paul is based in the UK, but has conducted research projects across numerous European markets in sectors as diverse as aviation, financial services, retail, and telecoms. What matters to Paul in 2024 is improving his guitar playing, doing his first Tough Mudder race, which is a 15-kilometre obstacle course, and interrailing with the family again this summer. And this is Alex, who is our cultural analyst and semiotician specialising in foresight, trends, and cultural change makers. She has a background in beauty and sexual wellness, specifically around brand marketing and product innovation. She is especially passionate about creating better futures for people and the planet. And what matters to Alex in 2024 is expanding her yoga teaching expertise. Please don't worry though, we won't be asking you to participate in any yoga postures during today's webinar. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Paul. Paul, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Laura. As Laura says, I'm Paul Child. I'm a partner here at Human Aid in the UK. Since 2020, we've been running trend research every year to help inform us and you on the dynamics affecting the world around us. And this year's no exception. So the latest instalment, our What Matters 2024 report, will be our focus today. But firstly, I thought it was just worth spending a couple of minutes to recap the journey to us becoming Human Aid. We're the result of 10 like-minded agencies joining forces to become a truly global agency, driving positive change for our clients through human understanding. We're an agency now with over 900 people around the world, 400 clients, 24 of our own offices and 8 further partner offices. We have our own networks, and we're carbon neutral and partly B Corp certified, with Space Doctors already having achieved that certification and the rest of the organisation working on it. And here in Europe, you may actually know us as the result of 4 different agencies coming together. We've got 8 offices. We're in the UK, France, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Romania. And those agencies coming together may be more familiar to you than the Human Aid brand. So we're a culmination of Join the Dots, Insights Consulting, Happy Thinking People, and Space Doctors joining forces to become part of the Human Aid family. Our focus is very much people, perspective, and partnership. And that powers our approach, putting people right at the heart of everything we do, connecting human experience to you and your stakeholders in order to drive change in your organisation. Today, we'll do this alongside our colleagues at Space Doctors and Alex, who'll be joining us. And Space Doctors are part of the Humanate family. In collaboration, we've produced the latest iteration of our What Matters report. If you're not familiar, this is an annual collaboration, an annual exercise where we produce the report. And this year we've updated our methodology. So we now include a global community alongside the semiotic analysis, a consultation with leading edge consumers, and experts, as well as a quantification in numerous markets around the world. As a result, we have an even richer understanding of the motivations that lie behind the attitudes and behaviours portrayed in the reports, and how the gaps between what people believe and what they say and what they actually do are created. It's a really fascinating deep dive, and I know that it's important to lots of brands to kind of understand these aspects. So we're seeing an awful lot of primary briefs coming through to us to actually tackle some of these issues. So as I say, today, Alex is going to take us through a few highlights of the report, and then we'll deep dive into some more particular areas. In our 2023 report, we focused on things that add meaning to our lives and actually saw how caring for our planet and people came through in pretty much every single one of those trends. So as we entered into 2024, we were really keen to continue down that path and actually have an even stronger focus on regeneration. We'll cover a number of different codes and quadrants, going from courageous vision to rethink and thrive, empowered minds and surgical solutions. The report zooms in on how these 4 dimensions of positive change manifest across the globe. We'll introduce 8 transformation codes, and alongside these, we'll talk about some of the underlying frictions and needs, as well as consumer expectations towards brands. We'll shed light on what people say versus what they do, and how brands can help close the gap. But before I hand over to Alex to kind of talk us a little bit more through those codes, we just thought we'd play a short video to give you a flavour of what we'll be covering today.
The pressure on people and planet is ever high. 8 out of 10 people worldwide are worried about the future. This is driving a collective desire for change. How can we move from less harm to more good? This is not a story about sustainability. It's a story about regeneration. As research shows, 78% of people globally believe we need to move beyond sustaining to reversing the damage done. The 2024 What Matters report highlights 8 ways how we can drive this transformation, the underlying frictions and needs, as well as consumer expectations towards brands. Change can start anywhere and be of any size. The time is now to do what matters.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Paul. And hopefully you enjoyed that video, which is just a little flavour of what we're going to be talking about today. So as we mentioned, we are Space Doctors, part of Humanate, and we are the cultural and creative agency within the family. So I'm a project director at Space Doctors, but I was also a lead on this report, which was honestly such a treat because it's such an area of passion for me, and it gave me a lot of hope for the future. So just a bit of a representation of who we are and what we do at Space Doctors. So, you know, when you work with market research, consumer research, this is really about getting close to people, right? So with communities and surveys and really understanding what matters to people. Whereas at Space Doctors, we look through the lens of culture, how culture is changing and the impacts that will have on the future. So this might be things that consumers wouldn't actually be able to tell you yet. They might not actually know how those ideas about the world got in their heads in the first place. So we use culture to tell you how it got there. And we use methods like semiotics to look at cultural meaning and applying that to think about future strategies. So if you've never worked with semiotics before, you'll have a good understanding by the end of this, hopefully. So we spend a lot of time thinking about the future, and when we present these future scenarios to clients, you might think about them as kind of future trends or future shifts. We often hear that they are super inspiring and they sound great, but it's the transition that's the tricky bit. How do we get there? How do we get to that future? So this report and the map of positive transformation that we'll talk about looks at the different types of change that are taking place across the landscape, with some examples that are interesting and emergent, but also tangible. So how did these kind of brands, these businesses, these organizations make that change and transition? So we did our kind of semiotic and cultural analysis up front, and we use our network of in-market semioticians who are on the ground in loads of different markets and can really get us to kind of the nuance of culture. We also use cultural AI, which we use we call it collaborative intelligence. And basically what that means is that we kind of take our cultural analysis and then we feed it into our data tools, which will then scrape from blogs and social media and things like that. And we can see how things like language and visuals are changing. And we spoke to our Illume network, who are our global network of cultural change makers. And these are people who are often trying to disrupt or make a change in a category. They kind of exist on the edges of culture, and they have a really strong point of view usually, which is great for us. So from this, we came up with our map and our codes, which we'll go into, but those were kind of fed into a community and a quant study. So it's a really nice piece, hopefully for you to see the Space Doctors and Human8 kind of partnership together using the best of our capabilities. Okay, so here it is. This is the start of the map of our positive transformation, and it really is just a starting point here. This is kind of the bare bones of the map, and we'll fill it in, don't worry. But we start with the axes. So this is formed by identifying those tensions across the landscape as we do our analysis. So we were looking at kind of what's the emergent change that's taking place, which brands are making kind of positive transitions. And we saw this tension between change that is focused versus expansive, and change that is mediated versus change that is organic. So let's look at those axes in a bit more detail. And it can feel a little complicated if you've never used a semiotic map before, but bear with me. And if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat and we can discuss at the end. So on the vertical axis at the top, we have mediated change, which is about change that is showing up here, which is shaped and direct. Challenges are approached with awareness of and influence over systems, and we're really kind of harnessing deep knowledge and applying it here. On the opposite side to that, we have organic. So this is change that is dynamic and amorphous. So this kind of change really flourishes as it grows, it builds, it might change direction, and it's really sort of fed by lived experience. That's what sustains this kind of change. And on the horizontal axis, we have focus on the left-hand side, where positive change is approached with precision, and often kind of that deep technical understanding. And this side of the map is all about spotlighting problems, isolating barriers to change, and thinking about really specific solutions. Whereas on the expansive side, so on the opposite side to that, we're looking at approaching change with kind of these more radical philosophies and, broad imagination. We're pursuing a complete sea change, and we're really trying to reframe the narrative. And then that brings us to our quadrants, which Paul will talk about in a bit more detail.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Alex. So working across these two axes, we're able to produce 4 quadrants. And starting in the top left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see that the high focus and high mediation brings us to surgical solutions, where we're looking for precise and focused actions that can have an exponential impact. As you move right to a more expansive but still mediated territory, we have courageous vision. And here we're looking for bold ideas and visions that revolutionize how we think and act. Beneath this, in the bottom right, we're looking at expansive but more organic, so rethink and thrive. And here we're challenging conventional paths and exploring alternative forms of organisation. And then finally, in the bottom left, we're focused and organic, what we've called empowered minds. And here we're enabling and empowering everyday people to become change makers. Each quadrant gives rise to our transformation codes. So there are 2 codes in each quadrant, and these describe how the quadrants are manifesting and how the changes are taking place. Today, we're going to focus on 4 of these in particular. But just before I do that, I'll give you a very brief overview of all 8 codes. So again, starting at the top line and on the left-hand side, we have pressure points. So this is all about people seeking solutions that release a significant wave of change and applying resources to a very focused action. Next, we have inventive applications, where creating new or innovative ways to use existing systems that are causing harm or will become obsolete is how that code will manifest. Moving further right and now into the next quadrant, we first of all have negative fuel. So taking the negative and actively using it as a resource for something beneficial. And next, manifesting manifestos. So visionary thinking, leading by example, asking what if and following through. As we move to the bottom line, we go to empowered minds and we start with flip the script. So actually, instead here of fighting for a seat at the table, this is about people actually setting their own table, about actually doing things for themselves and starting anew. And next we have director's chair, which is about devolving power to drive change. So that the idea that people with a lived experience are actually the best people to take control and creative control of their own futures. The final quadrant, Rethink and Thrive, again made up of 2 transformation codes. And here we have decentralized networks, so the alternative systems that challenge long-standing institutions and provide more access and autonomy. And then sharing is daring, so redefining value to move beyond transaction and ownership towards sharing and utility. And as I say, Alex will take us through 4 of those codes in more detail through the rest of our presentation.
Cool. So these are the 4 that we are going to focus on, and it's really important to think about how these codes sit across the map. And you might want to, as we go through, think about your brand, your business, your organization, think about where you sit on the map, which codes are kind of more relevant to you right now, which might be more relevant in the future, which do you just kind of, they're not necessarily something you're going to act on, but they're something you want to be aware of, and like which codes are our competitors playing into, for example, and where do they sit on the map. So we are, as we said, only going to go into detail about 4 of these codes, but in the full report you can see them all. So we're going to start with 2 codes within the Courageous Vision quadrant. So it can also be helpful to just think about these as kind of like sub-themes within the themes, but it's really just a way to show how these quadrants are showing up differently in culture and creating different cultural meanings. So, Courageous Vision. And remember, this is all about path breaking, taking risks, and leading by example. So the first way that we see this showing up in culture is negative fuel. So negative fuel is all about accepting the mistakes of the past and the mess that we have made while working towards a more positive future. So here we might be talking about a physical transformation, so things like integrating plastic waste into a circular system, or it could be social as well, which could be about acknowledging an outdated idea and using it to directly help the people who may have been oppressed or harmed by it. And for each code, you will see how each country came through in our testing in terms of identification and behaviour. And from this, we land on a say-do gap, which basically gives a percentage of people who are yet to act upon this. So you can see the kind of level of opportunity and also how much this code is emerging for people, or if that idea is kind of becoming, it's more becoming mainstream now. So for negative fuel, while 68% of the people we spoke to identified with this, only 30% are acting upon it. So we're kind of seeing that opportunity there for businesses and brands to connect with people. You will also see some quotes from the communities that we tested this with. So for this one, we really heard from people that it's important to kind of take ownership of past behaviours before looking ahead for the right thing to do. And in culture, we can see a few emerging examples of this. There's a beer brand called Miller Lite who collected old kind of sexist beer ads from magazines and posters, and they asked people to send them in, and they bought loads of old ones off eBay and places like that. And they took the physical posters and magazines and ads themselves and turn them into mulch, which they then passed on to female brewers who used for their hops to make new batches of beer. And the examples that we've picked here are obviously quite inspirational, but it's important to think about small steps as well, and ways that we could play into these areas that feel right for our brand. So the next example that we'll see here from culture is On Running's clean cloud technology that turn carbon emissions into a mono-material shoe. And the idea is that users pay a monthly subscription. So when they've worn out their trainers, they can return them for a new pair, while the old ones are easily recycled because they are a mono-material, creating this kind of circular system.
What if there's more than one way to think about carbon emissions? What if they're actually part of the solution? What if, instead of waste, they're a resource? What if we could find ways to turn them into things we see and wear every day? What if someone just needed to take the first step? Clean cloud, made from carbon emissions.
Our next code within this quadrant is called manifesting manifestos. And this is all about visionary thinking and following it through. So we're asking what if and leading by example. And for this code, we heard from people that they personally, as an individual, might not have the resource or kind of the confidence to take a risk and try this type of transformation. And they need and they really want inspiring people to lead the way. There's a pretty significant say-do gap here, as we also heard from people that most brands tend to play it safe when it comes to those sort of bigger, riskier transformations, making it feel kind of less tangible for them and more emergent currently. And this is only right for some brands and businesses who have the kind of cultural space and cultural capital to think and act in this way. So perhaps it could be thinking about some movement into this space with one campaign or one team within your organization. And we can look at brands like Deplastificate, who are a beauty brand focused on deplasticizing the planet by creating waterless personal care products, as well as a refillable glass bottle return system. And the language here is really important because the brand set out to kind of have their own point of view on plastic, acknowledging that it never really degrades but translates into microplastic. And on their website, they kind of state that the average human being consumes 40 pieces of microplastic a year. This is not right and we have to change it. So you can really see how that's kind of them setting out their mission, their manifesto of what they want to do. Similarly, in Sweden, we see an outdoor clothing brand called Houdini laying out a very clear sort of manifesto relating to regeneration on their site. So they actually reached their aim of using fabrics that are 100% recyclable, renewable, biodegradable, or Blue Sign certified. And again, the language is really important here because the brand kind of reclaim and repair clothes for their customers, and then they also resell them on their site. And their mission is kind of really clearly outlined for people to see. And they say, our main goal is to create real alternatives to linear consumption. And there's also a really clear connection here. This might have been the first brand that came to mind in this space, is Patagonia. And they really led the way by having Earth as a shareholder in their business. So this brand could have gone public, but instead they went for purpose. And we know that people really associate Patagonia with asking what if kind of questions in the first place, and then sticking to those values themselves. So their founder even kind of introduced flexible working hours for staff back in kind of the 70s, simply because he knew that if there was good surf in the morning, then his employees would want to go and enjoy the waves. So they would need to just start work later. And we're going bottom left of the map now for empowered minds. So this is diagonally opposite to the first quadrant we explored. So you can see how the map can be useful here in providing a framework to see all the different ways that this kind of change is showing up. And you can really start to see those opposing tensions playing out. So empowered minds, this space is all about empowering change makers from the bottom up. And we'll look at a code here in this space called Director's Chair. So this is kind of a sub-theme of empowered minds. And this code approaches change in a way that truly devolves power to people who have lived experience in a space that needs transformation. And we really found in this piece of analysis that it's often more privileged groups who are distant from the reality of an issue, but they're the ones who are the decision makers, and they're in control of the direction of change, even though, you know, they might not have any kind of close relation to the issue. So here, we're not only giving a voice to marginalized people, but we're truly letting them have creative control. So for brands and businesses, this might be about customers or employees getting involved in kind of the change that they want to see. And we heard in the community that people know and acknowledge that it's important to understand these perspectives and not only seek out, but amplify these voices as well. And people in the UK and Germany here already have quite a high behaviour in this space, so we might think about how to build on that momentum. We looked at a Tokyo-based eatery called the Restaurant of Mistaken Orders, and their kind of approach to change is they hire people who are suffering from dementia, enabling positive impacts both for the individuals themselves who are suffering with dementia by reducing loneliness, but also the broader community too. And the founder says that they hope this kind of feeling of openness and understanding will spread across Japan and kind of throughout the world. Another example from culture is P&T, which is an independent bookstore and event space in New York that has a podcast studio, which is free for the community to use. And it's really about empowering people to create their own shows, their own narratives. They're absolutely free to record about any topic that they would like to. So it's really about not only, you know, having someone use your platform, but create their own story and create their own platform. The example that we'll look at here is from Estrid Razors. So they are a beauty and body care brand, and they worked with some social media diversity champions to direct and star in their campaign, which is called For Human Beauty. And it's really about showing body hair as a way to shape identity and self-expression. And they really gave these kind of diversity champions creative control for this campaign. Okay. And finally, we are in the top left of the map here for our final quadrant that we're going to look at, which is called surgical solutions. So this is about that kind of focused and mediated change. And we can look in more detail at our code called inventive application. So this code really looks at change by applying innovation or creativity to existing systems that may be harmful or simply just becoming obsolete. We're really understanding our entire supply chain, all the way we resource our teams, and thinking about different ways that we can utilize what's already there. In the community for this code, we heard about really kind of tangible things that people are seeing, like abandoned buildings or tech advancements that often mean that previous versions are not necessary but remain underutilized. And this is one of the larger say-do gaps, with 75% of people identifying with this code, but only 29% acting upon it. So we're seeing an emerging need here, really, from people, but also from things like regulation that might be making us question our systems and think about different ways to approach our supply chains, our materials, our practices that may be restricted by law in the future, or because there are kind of systems are unusable because of flooding or because of temperature increases, for example. So a few examples of this from culture. After kind of the rapid transition made during the pandemic in relation to vaccinations, Coca-Cola collaborated with a company called Late Mile to use their existing distribution methods of kind of refrigerated vehicles to not just deliver soda, but to deliver vaccines across Africa for things that are kind of those treatable diseases like malaria. And really, by leveraging Coca-Cola's networks, the public health departments there were able to kind of strengthen their systems. Another example of this is the Sustainable Wine Roundtable. So this is a global platform of collaboration to advance sustainability across the wine industry with this kind of independent, multi-stakeholder roundtable. And it has over 100 members, and they kind of work together to come up with the SWR Bottle Weight Accord, which was introduced in 2023, and we'll see retailers like Lidl and Laithwaites commit to reducing the weight of all their wine bottles to kind of significantly reduce the resources needed and emissions caused by transporting the bottles. So we'll see an example here from Lego Braille bricks. And these are Lego bricks with the Braille alphabet on them. They're really cool. They're kind of designed to help all children, not just those who are visually impaired, learn Braille. And the reason it's included in this code is because it's about applying the principles of play to learning.
Lisa and Matt and their two young daughters are sat. They open a box of Lego Braille bricks. Lisa to camera.
Olivia lost her vision at such a young age. The whole way that she's learned about the whole world, essentially, is through sensory touch.
Lisa.
Do you want to find your name in the bricks?
Olivia.
I've got an A already.
An A?
She was first introduced to Lego Braille bricks in her class at school.
I think I normally use Braille in my books and at school. I started it in reception and my Braille teacher taught it to me.
The fact that we've now have that at home has just changed everything.
The family's playing with the Lego Braille bricks and associated online play starters on a tablet.
Rock, paper, scissors. Who's going to win, Olivia?
Me.
3, go! You can see they're just both as engaged as each other, and that's the main thing. It brings a typical game into the household that's got something set.
Okay. So those are 4 of our 8 codes of positive transformation. And hopefully they kind of start to build out the landscape for you to see how that kind of approach to change is changing. And also, I think it's really important that we wanted to kind of mention today that this isn't just something that is about kind of things that are happening from the top down, it's also about from the bottom up. And there's kind of a role for everyone in every kind of area of the business, every meeting you have, every kind of webinar that you attend, to kind of have an impact in this space and to really start to create that kind of positive transformation.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Alex. So already Alex has shared a summary of some of the elements of the What Matters reports. As Alex kind of has highlighted, we've only really shared a selection of the codes and a selection of the data available. If you'd like to learn more, please do reach out, get in touch. There's a lot more in the report by more markets. We've very much zoomed in on Europe within this presentation and within the kind of within some of the markets there. We've also included data around the say-do gap, so the difference between what consumers believe and what their attitude is and the actions they're taking around these codes. But we've very much done that from a European perspective. Within the report, there's more markets, there's a global perspective on that. And also actually there's stuff like sector association, where we've asked consumers which sectors are doing this, should be doing this, or are doing this well in there as well. So there's a lot more in the report to kind of get into. And I think exactly as Alex was saying, alongside the examples that we've been sharing from culture, we also wanted to share some examples from the primary research we're doing, because guys are feeling inspired about some of the themes and some of the kind of examples that Alex has shared, but also there's that bit about how we bridge from inspiration to activation in the research work that we do. And we at Humanate have actually been working on live briefs and live inquiries from clients that actually do step very much into this similar territory. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time now talking about how we've done some of those. So the first example I'm going to start with is a fairly iconic one. I'm sure we all recognise Barbie on slide. And for those of you who've been to see the film with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, some of this story may actually be really familiar in terms of it. So we actually started reimagining Barbie to shape a confident future for the next generation of girls. Mattel actually already had observed that the evolving landscape of female representation in culture needed a more nuanced understanding of the challenges and opportunities that it presented to Barbie as a brand. Barbie has faced criticism for perpetuating narrow gender and beauty standards among young girls. And actually, if you think to the opening kind of 3 minutes or so of the film, it almost leans into this challenge as part of the Barbie movie. And when they approached us, the team really wanted a deeper understanding of how Barbie could reclaim her status as a positive role model. And the evolution here really was not just about a toy, but very much a commitment to shaping the future for a diverse and empowered generation of young minds, and very much in that space of actually courageous vision, a brand taking the lead, and actually bringing a manifesto, a kind of cause to the customer base in terms of it. So how did we do this? Well, we used cultural insight and semiotic research across 6 different global markets. And we looked at what those unique challenges that young girls were facing were. And that allowed us to actually understand a bit more about what we called affirmative influencers. So role models that are showing up in culture and that were emerging in the cultural context and empowering young girls to challenge and overcome the more constraining gender stereotypes. That allowed us to pave the way forward for powerful narratives that the Barbie brand could then champion and inspire girls about the sort of limitless scope that they could have. And that became a foundational piece of research that sparked the idea behind the Barbie Dream Gap project that some of you may have come across, which is a global initiative by Mattel to educate society on gender bias and expand the potential that girls see in themselves. And it's really all about providing resources and support so that girls can believe in themselves and actually empower themselves to succeed. And that's something that's still carrying on today. And like I say, it was great for us to kind of sit down in the cinema, turn up and watch Barbie and actually see some of that happen within that movie. The next example I wanted to share, again within the Manifesting Manifestos quadrant, is about Philips. Now, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Philips. Some of you may actually be joining us on the call from there, but it's one of the largest electronics companies in the world. But over the last decade, it's undergone a transformation to reshape its portfolio and become very focused on being a health technology company. And actually, it's very much centered now on efforts to improve people's health and well-being through the innovative application of technology and different solutions. And there are 5 kind of principles that underpin that. So increase the number of lives improved by developing solutions that help solve social issues and deliver on sustainability commitments. To amplify the voices of underserved communities, women and children, and we'll come back to that actually in the next case study. To embed solutions in the broader healthcare ecosystem and increase access to care, and to unite global stakeholders around deep human understanding and empathy. And finally, to accelerate consumer and customer learning in the innovation journey. And this transformation required insights and innovation functions to adapt, to evolve from a product-centric to more of a people-centric mindset, and then to support internal stakeholders in making that shift to actually develop a whole new innovation practice. So we worked with Philips to generate a new approach that meant we could prioritize human understanding through the journey. And instead of kind of intense learning opportunities and sprints, we involved stakeholders early in the process and through numerous bite-sized interactions. So we used learning loops and continuous learning to be able to build on success and really iterate innovation. We used an online community in order to be able to put ideas into there and to use a range of activities to fuel the innovation practice. And then actually there was also an initiative to build change management around that process as well. And some of the impact of that has been really phenomenal. So we've managed to increase the number of lives that has been improved. Around about 535 million people, we think, have been affected by this innovation in a positive way. Amplified the voices of the underserved communities and doing things like pregnancy resources. So the Philips Pregnancy Plus app, which has been huge in the US. Also kids with the Philips Sonicare Kids app as well. Being able to embed these solutions in the broader healthcare system. So actually being able to meet with key stakeholders and key kind of influencers within there and drive meaningful change that way. To unite global stakeholders around the organization, and actually that's led to NPS scores of 70 points plus from Philips stakeholders internally around the research process, and actually to accelerate the learning, so to do things just much quicker in terms of it. And all this actually led to Clarivate including Philips in their top 100 global innovators, and actually a grand total of 171 design awards for Philips as a result of this initiative. The next case we wanted to kind of study, again actually from the Philips stable, but this time moving into the director's chair code, which as a reminder is all about kind of bringing to life audiences that perhaps have been underserved or underestimated or underheard in terms of it. Really, when we started kind of the conversation with Philips around this, there was a lot of focus on diversity and around kind of the Black Lives Matter movement and a conversation about more inclusive and representative futures. And for Philips and for one of their key resellers, the idea about how well catered Black African Americans were as part of their portfolio, and particularly when it came to hair care, was raised as a question. So Philips looked to support that retail partner by bringing thought leadership and insights to the table in order to help establish that more inclusive approach. And this resulted in a really broad but very bold brief about educate me on the experience of caring for Black African American hair. So we approach this through, again, a combination of different methods. We use social intelligence and listened to over 1,000 conversations digitally, looked at social platforms and relevant online forums, and through reviews and recommendations and search terms and memes, we were able to not just observe the language used, but also the more subtle forms of communication through imagery and cultural references. We also then used leading edge input. So we mentioned that this was part of the methodology of the What Matters report. It's something we used here, where we took a network of performers, unique individuals, people who are really edge users of these sorts of things, or had heightened experience of the issues that we were wanting to tackle. And they showed us, they told us all the things that we needed to know in order to answer this brief. And we used a number of different digital ethnographic techniques in order to do that. We got people to vlog about hair care routines, create digital mood boards, and we also then engaged in conversation with them, got them to talk us through the different media and content that they created. And in terms of kind of the success of this, it's really lived on in terms of Philips and in terms of the understanding the experience of Black African American hair care and in supporting the retail partner. And it's really focused on cultural identity. So through hair, where consumers can have a deep-rooted history and bonding as a community, and that idea of self-discovery through hair care. Also natural authenticity. So what does it mean to actually be authentic in this space, and actually the way that kind of natural hair types are embraced and serviced within the kind of product portfolio, but also absolutely a recognition that there are unique tensions here as well, and actually that some of the solutions and innovations need to be unique to this particular position and this particular audience. And all these rich findings enabled us to work with both Philips and with their retailer partner, and resulted in kind of a particular web page, particular shopping experiences, particular journeys, all designed to kind of cater for this potentially underserved, underestimated, under-realized audience. The final example I'm just going to share today moves us into the surgical solutions quadrant and the pressure points code that obviously we've talked a little bit about today. And this was a recycling immersion piece we did with Nestlé. So using a community approach to better support consumers' recycling efforts. So Nestlé really wanted to understand the aspects around recycling in the moment, and to better support consumers in the way they were doing it. So we ran an insight community which asked people to record videos, to record themselves kind of recycling, to give some information in surveys and in blogs, and to really give us that kind of 360-degree view of how people understood recycling and how they went about it. And actually, as a result of this work, we obtained a Best Paper Award at a conference in Australia where we did the work. But most importantly, what we actually discovered was how many questions there still are about recycling, and how often people were just confused about actually what they needed to do. Where does this part of the packaging belong? Where does this part of the packaging belong? If there's food on it, can I still recycle it? If there are, if I've got a great intention, I really would like to do this, but actually I'm not sure about the behavior to do it. So that say-do gap that we've been talking about, very manifest here, where actually people really want to do the recycling but aren't always sure exactly how, and some of those barriers can really prevent them doing what they intended. So as a result of this, we were able to actually help Nestlé to not only encourage behaviors through kind of support on websites and through social channels, but also to actually put messaging on their packaging that was able to facilitate the kind of change and make it very accessible and easy for people to embrace recycling. So that's just some examples of how we've actually been taking some of the themes that Alex has spoken about today and actually put them within insight and to take the inspiration that Alex always brings to the projects and to actually activate those against client briefs. So just in terms of what we've done today, we really hope we've inspired you. We really hope that we've shown that actually there's a lot happening in this space already. There's a lot of examples that we should all be looking to. There's definitely a way that we can all start to be part of this change. And we really believe, as Alex was just saying, that actually together we can all come together and really make a difference by recognizing these transformations happening around us, recognizing what's happening in culture, and really embracing them and utilizing them in the work that we do day to day. So here are the kind of final two questions we wanted to leave you with today. What matters for your brand, category, and audience? Do you know that? Do you understand that? Do you understand that at a deep and fundamental level? And then are you taking that and innovating around what those needs and wants and desires are? And actually, if you kind of start to address those two questions, I think you'll come up with some really interesting challenges for yourself and for your business.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Paul. We hope that you've enjoyed finding out more about what matters to Europeans in 2024. We'd love the opportunity to speak to you more to help explore how we can help you incorporate some of our thinking into your work. So please do get in touch with us. For today, though, thank you so much for joining us. And I wish you lots of smiles and curiosity as you explore what matters to you, your brands, and your customers in 2024. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.